Welcome. We're so glad to see you all today. Welcome to our Central Village gathering. We are so delighted today to welcome Adrienne Brotherton from the Birth to Five Helpline at Southwest Human Development. Adrienne is an early childhood mental health specialist with the Birth to Five Helpline at Southwest Human Development. She worked as a family support specialist at the Child Crisis Nursery, as a Healthy Families program manager, and as a family support specialist for the Caring program Together with the Arizona Department of Child Safety before joining the Helpline team in May 2018. She has a level 2 FAN certificate. Adrienne has a Master's of Advanced Studies in Infant Family Practice from ASU and a Bachelor of Science in Child Development from Northern Illinois University. She's also endorsed by the Infant Toddler Mental Health Association of Arizona. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
Yeah, and before we start, I just want to let everybody know that we have a couple of events coming up. So if you haven't already registered for them, tomorrow is our East Valley Village. It's actually the third Thursday, just like today is the second Wednesday, oddly enough. And that one's going to be preparing for your postpartum through the eyes of a doula. You can check that out in our events. And then our fourth trimester conference, an all-day event, is happening on April 24th. And if you register by Friday night, you will get your package in the mail probably midweek next week, and it will include a t-shirt. All right, so we will go ahead and let Adrienne start with her presentation for today. Thanks so much for being here with us, Adrienne.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. So today I kind of wanted to talk about mindfulness, mindful parenting, really being in tune with kind of what's going on with us. I think so often we get so caught up in all of the to-dos of the day, and we're just going, and don't really stop to kind of be aware of what's going on either in our bodies or with us emotionally. And we kind of just push past it and we push through, and we don't take the time to, really be in tune and to understand what's going on. And I think the more that we do that, things just kind of get pushed down, but eventually don't really go anywhere. And so sometimes you find yourself exploding at your toddler for a silly reason, and it really wasn't about what happened there. It's that things have been building throughout the day that we haven't stopped to recognize and to accept. And so, and it can happen with physical things too. Sometimes you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, like I didn't even realize that, that was bothering me all day, or that I was really feeling a lot of stress in my shoulders, or, some of those things can really kind of tune us into what might be going on for us. And we, just kind of tend to push past them. And so today I want to talk a lot about, learning to kind of stop and breathe, mindfulness, but also mindful parenting. And they kind of go together, but really, I think there's a lot of talk out there. Mindfulness is kind of this new age, really popular thing right now. And so there's some, people might have questions about what it is and what it's not. So we're going to get to, kind of clarifying some of that a little bit today. But along with mindfulness goes breathing. And so we do this a lot in the helpline, like before we start kind of our weekly helpline meetings, we always take what we call like a mindful moment, but we take a minute to breathe. And so I kind of like to start out and encourage everybody to go along with me and just kind of get ourselves in a space where we can really just kind of let all of the stresses go as much as possible. I know most of us are home and home with our kids, and so we're going to take just a couple of good deep breaths together. So what we usually do is kind of put both of our feet on the floor, kind of ground yourself where you're at. Really relax your hands, relax your shoulders. And the key to deep breathing is to go slow. So we usually say to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then try to breathe out for closer to 5 or 6 seconds. So we're going to do that together 3 times, and I'll kind of, lead us. So we'll go real relaxed, and we'll go in through our nose, and then hold for 4, and then out through our mouth. And then we'll do it again. So in through your nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to go out through our mouth, nice and slowly. Okay, and then let's do one more. Okay, so just kind of trying to notice where you're at, and if you're feeling a little bit more calm and relaxed, it kind of gets us in the space to start thinking about, just where we are in space, and helps us relax a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about what mindfulness is. On its own, mindfulness is kind of living in the moment, or being aware of where you are in the world, what you're thinking, what you're feeling. But the next part of mindfulness, and maybe doesn't get talked about as much, is it's also about accepting where you are. And it's about less judgment and more acceptance of just kind of being able to say, okay, this is really hard right now. I'm feeling very stressed. I'm feeling, just kind of naming it and accepting it. I think as parents, that can be hard. I think we enter parenthood or motherhood with all these expectations of who we're going to be and what it's going to look like, and that we're going to be this amazingly patient and warm and nurturing, right? Like we all have this image in our head of the kind of parent that we want to be. And then we're really faced to look at parts of ourselves that we maybe didn't know were there, or that we didn't realize was in us. It magnifies those things. Maybe you didn't realize you had a temper, or you maybe didn't realize that you had, an issue with resentment, bitterness, things like that, that really, are hard for us to accept. But a lot of mindfulness is just saying, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I'm feeling. And to really try to accept it without judgment. That this is hard, and that's okay. And so that's kind of the other part of mindfulness, is 1 is to be aware, and 2, to be accepting and non-judgmental. Because the more we can do that for ourselves, the more we can do that for our kids, right? Is that the more compassionate and gentle we are with ourselves, that starts to trickle down to our interactions with our children, which is really what we all want, right? Is to be kind of calm and attuned to our children's emotional state. But it can be hard to do that when we're not that way with ourselves. So, self-care has gotten a lot of talk recently. We talk a lot about self-care. We talked about it at the beginning in our introductions of what people kind of do when they're really stressed. And I think, that's super important, but that doesn't always feel like something you can kind of do in the moment. Super important to do something that you enjoy. And I myself, as a parent of young children, have even said, well, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time to just go take a shower, to fit in a workout, or to it's like, I don't have time for that. But one thing I found is that I do have time to just take a couple minutes to breathe and know where I am and accept where I am, and then be able to kind of move forward from that. Because I think with mindful parenting, the big difference is about being able to kind of not get hijacked by our emotions in the minute of what's going on, and being able to kind of stop and then respond. And so it's not always, flowers and butterflies. Of course, you're still going to get frustrated, and you're still going to have raw, true emotion. But it's about being able to kind of stop and recognize and accept where you're at. And then being able to respond to your child in a way that is less emotionally charged, maybe. So let's talk about also some things that can happen when we're kind of working in survival mode. We hear this a lot on the helpline, is that, parents are so, especially during this pandemic, this last year has been, it's taken away everything, community and, there's so much that has been lost, especially for new moms, first time moms, in this pandemic. And so, when we're really just kind of pushing through and we're not able to really be in touch with us, sometimes we stop trusting ourselves. And when you have a new baby, to lose the ability to kind of trust your instincts can be really hard. And there's a lot of different reasons that can happen. Our own experiences can influence our ability to trust ourselves and to know that we have what it takes for this baby. We are who this baby needs. And to be able to believe that. But all of these things really kind of can get in the way of feeling like we can even hear ourselves and find our instincts in there. Sometimes they're so varied by messages and by stress and by a traumatic birth experience or a NICU stay or a perinatal mood disorder. All of these things can kind of cloud our ability to trust ourselves and to trust our instincts as moms. And so the more we can kind of practice mindfulness and being aware of where we're at and what we're feeling and being accepting of that, it can help us kind of find those natural instincts and be able to say, yeah, like this is super hard right now. Like this baby is not sleeping, but I have what it takes. Like this isn't going to last forever. This is a phase. Being able to kind of have some self-talk and letting go of judgment and letting go of expectations in that moment and just say, this is hard, but I have this. Like I can be what this baby needs. Because when it can be so hard to find again when we have all these insecurities when we become parents anyways. But we also have really good instincts, and not every baby needs the same thing. And so, kind of trusting that you have what it takes to care for this baby can really be something that mindfulness can help to give us that trust back in ourselves. So that's, something that we really talk about a lot when parents do call the helpline, is just kind of helping them slow down and give space to, really kind of explore some of those things that they maybe hadn't thought about before, or to help them re-establish that trust in themselves that they got this, because that's so important. So I want to read kind of a little quote that I had written down from Alicia Goldstein, who's a psychologist that uses mindfulness a lot in her practice in LA. She says, parents often have an innate sense of inadequacy when it comes to their own children, which I think we can all probably admit to a little bit. When it comes to parenting mindfully, a lot of the work is learning to make peace with our imperfections, because we're going to do things that hurt our kids. And she's talking more emotionally in that moment when we snap at them, when we say things we wish that we didn't mean. And we're going to beat ourselves up. But instead, we can make peace with our imperfections and begin to regulate our emotional state. We can be calmer and more present for our kids. And that cultivates some self-compassion. So a lot of it is so true, is that we're really hard on ourselves. And we have, parenting in the last 10 years there's so much information and there's so much advice and there's so much out there. I think we're also kind of bombarded with this is best and this is best. And, we're all trying to follow all the rules and to do everything right. And to, because we don't want to screw up our kids, right? Like that's the concern, is that nobody wants their kids to end up in therapy because of their parenting. And there's a very real, I can attest that I have felt this and I've experienced this of like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally losing it on my toddler. And now he's not going to learn any sense of emotional regulation. And, I mean, we put so much pressure on ourselves, but to really be able to say, take that deep breath in the moment, learn from times when we have totally lost it, and to just be able to really accept where we're at and say, this is hard. I'm feeling, I'm angry right now. We encourage doing that a lot with young kids, but we don't do it a lot with ourselves. How often do we really just like name our own stuff, like name our own feelings and our own experiences in the minute, and not be judgmental of ourselves, and not, let go of the expectations of being perfect all the time and handling it right every time. Because those are the things that really kind of keep us from being able to really be kind of in tune with ourselves. And then also in tune with our kids. It's really hard to be emotionally present for your kids when you're not present in the moment. And there's so many things, that kind of keep us from being present. And that was one of kind of my discussion questions that I wanted to pose is, what do parents really struggle with these days with really feeling like they can be present? I know for me, my phone is one of the things that I really struggle with. It's like I had do everything on my phone. My grocery list is on my phone. Like, so it's like every time I think of something that's to be on the grocery list, well, I take out my phone and I add it to it. So I find often throughout the day that I'm missing opportunities to connect with my kids, or, I am not present because I am on my phone. And so just kind of wondering, are there other things that other people find that keeps them from being present or being in the moment, or really feeling grounded? Obviously, stress and just day-to-day parenting stuff, but things that you can recognize in yourself and say, yeah, okay, this is something that I, keeps me from being really present. And you don't have to say it out loud. This is just, you can share it, or you can just kind of think about it, whatever folks are comfortable with.
Yeah, for me, I noticed that if I don't do anything for myself at any time during the day, like if I'm really just going, then I'm not present at all. Not like for me, not for my kids. And that seems to make a huge difference. So even if it's, a small thing like going outside or working out, or, whatever it is that I've decided to do for the day, I feel like even if it was just going outside, that makes a huge difference. And when I don't, like when I have a day where I'm just go the whole time, it's worthless almost. Like I'm not all the way there for anybody, my kids included.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. And I know somebody just put in the chat about working from home being a huge, huge challenge, is that there's no, there's no boundary there. There's nice things about working from home for sure. I think we can all get on board with, like, it's nice not to have to, like, get yourself dressed from the bottom down in the morning, or like, the commute. I think nobody probably misses the commute if you work far from home or anything like that. But certainly working from home, it's hard to turn it off, and then to turn off your work brain and to turn on your mom brain, or if you're trying to do both at the same time, for all those parents who have endured this pandemic of, wanting to, try to do it both at the same time. Certainly that can cause me with being in tune to your child, because there's so much going on all at the same time. So I get that.
Yeah. Especially those of us who
I know we had one.
For sure.
Yeah, that's been a big challenge.
Yeah.
I can relate to the whole working from home. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the term boundaries. Because, right, like, I mean, we have a commute to kind of clear our head and, you know, prepare ourselves for that shift to the work environment. But now we have nothing in between. It's like you get up, you go to the computer, your kids are all around you. And, you know, there's no, there's no clearly defined rule there. And you can do everything from one space. And so it blurs those lines. And oh gosh, yeah, it's been difficult.
I mean, the physical boundary of like work belongs at the office and home belongs at home has been completely mushed, you know? And so you're right. I think a lot of us kind of used to depend on that commute home to kind of process work and leave it at work, and then to start to prepare to, you know, start your, you know, your evening with your family. And that can be really hard. And so we kind of might have to create that space and that distance ourselves, of, you know, closing the computer, be taking a few minutes to take some breaths and to, you know, just kind of visualize work being, you know, closed or done, or that door being closed, just how, or walking away, just like we might when we were back in a physical office. And then kind of visualize, you know, opening the front door to your home and going into your home. I think some of those visualizations and breathing and taking those moments can help us with that transition, because that can be really hard. And sometimes you don't even, you know, it's all just mushed together throughout the day, and there's not really maybe even an end to your day. You know, you continue to work after the kids go to bed because you maybe didn't get as much work done during the day as you would have liked to because there are children present. And so, yeah, there's lots of challenges with that, but just kind of, right. Yeah, somebody says, that's me 3 days a week. Yeah, and it's hard, and recognizing this is really hard. This is probably one of the hardest years of for most people, probably has been the hardest year of their life. And I can't even imagine, especially if we're a first-time parent and you have had a brand new baby in this last year, and just, you know, the supports that have maybe not safe, and you're not going to the mommy and me, you know, lap sits at the library, you know, all those natural supports in the community that so many new moms, you know, maybe we're expecting or we're hoping would happen, have not been happening. So we'll talk a little bit at the end about support systems, and I'll kind of bring in a little bit more about the helpline and what, you know, what we do as you know, part of that support system. Luckily we're phone-based, and we've always been phone-based. So, you know, that's a good thing for this time and what's going on with the pandemic. But I also want to talk too a little bit about, you know, our bodies, you know, listening to what's going on with our bodies and knowing our bodies, of knowing where do we hold stress? Where do we carry stress? How do we know throughout the day that maybe we've been pushing things off kind of all day? Yeah, Sarah's pointing to her neck and her shoulders. It's very common. I know for me, I clench my jaw. I do it when I sleep too, but I find myself like, if I have not been mindful of myself throughout the day, or I have just kind of been pushing through, or things have been particularly chaotic, I definitely find like my jaw will get tired. Yeah, jaw is clenched all the time. And that's kind of how you know that you maybe need to take some time. And I think part of it is just learning to recognize for you and your body where you carry your stress, or how you know that you're feeling stressed or anxious, because sometimes we're so bogged down that we're not even really aware of how we're feeling, but our bodies can give us clues. You know, I also, you know, like some people have like skin picking, like I pick, you know, and I know that I'm feeling anxious. Like I've, you know, had to learn that like, oh, hey, yeah, my cuticles are getting really gross. I'm probably am pretty anxious lately. So let's take a moment to kind of really recognize that and figure out maybe where that might be coming from. Because the more we just go and go and go and do, we kind of get on autopilot a little bit, and we're not always stopping to be in touch with what's going on with us, especially physically, because even, you know, especially after you've just had a baby, there's so many changes, and so many things to be aware of. And I think so many of us show up at our 6 month or our 6-week postpartum checkup, and the doctor will ask us something and we'll be like, I don't even know. Like, that's a great question. And I don't know, because I have not paid attention, right? And so, you know, really helping us to kind of, we're going to do an exercise in a minute called body scanning. And so we're going to take a minute to kind of draw attention from our head to our toes, of kind of figuring out what's going on in our bodies right now as we sit here, and recognizing things that maybe we didn't recognize before. We do this sometimes in helpline meetings too, where we will do like in really noticing where we are. Like we will notice 5 things in the room that we're in that maybe we noticed before. And it's amazing, like, so we do seeing and hearing and smelling and touching, and you know, it's amazing the things that you start to notice when you just take a moment to stop and to notice. It's like, I never noticed that window, something about that window cover. You know, we've been in this room or in this house for however many years, and it wasn't until, you know, we sat here and really took the time to clear our heads and notice things that we hadn't really noticed before. And so let's kind of practice this one for a minute. I'll kind of walk you through it. This is called body scan meditation. We're going to kind of just take some time to go. We're going to start up at our heads, and we're just going to draw attention to any parts of your body. And if during any of this you feel something jumps out at you, or, you know, it's like, oh, I really do have doing that, or I really do have some tension there, to try to just visually release that tension from that part of your body, or just take notice of something. If something, you know, hadn't really noticed something before, or to just take notice of it and just accept that. So let's start by taking a couple, you know, get comfortable in your chair, whatever feels comfortable for you. Usually we encourage people to kind of, you know, lay their hands in their lap and to put their feet on the floor. And we'll start with just a couple of breaths to kind of get us in that zone of really being aware of where we are. So let's start with a couple of breaths. We'll go in through our nose, and we'll hold for 4. And we'll go out through our mouth very slowly. Okay, and then we'll go in one more through our nose and hold for a count of 4. And then exhale. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start at our head. I want you to kind of draw your attention to the top of your head, maybe your forehead, maybe your temples. Just spend a minute kind of focusing there. We'll move down to kind of our eyes and our nose, maybe the back of our head where our neck kind of meets, meets our skull a little bit there. I know sometimes people hold a lot of tension there. We'll kind of move down a little bit further, down towards, our chin and moving into our neck, certainly our shoulders. If we're feeling any kind of tension or stress in our shoulders, to go ahead and Just kind of visually release that. Take another deep breath if you need to. We'll move down into our chest. We'll feel and be aware of our heartbeat, where that might be, if it's faster than normal, if it's feeling nice and steady. We'll kind of move down each arm to our fingers. Are we clenched? Are we relaxed? Feel our hands touching the chair, our hands touching our thighs, maybe, just wherever that contact is being made. Notice anything that might be going on in your hands, fidgeting, and kind of move into your abdomen area. Are you finding that you're clenched in your abdomen, or are you feeling you're breathing through your abdomen, in and out? And we'll move down to kind of our lower waist and our hip area, our pelvic area. Sometimes people can hold stress there. You might find that your lower back is sore. Just giving some extra attention there, and releasing any kind of tension, and just taking notice to anything that maybe you hadn't noticed about your body before. And we'll move down our thighs and kind of into our knees. Just notice, take deep breaths. And we'll go down our legs a little bit more into our feet, into our toes. Sometimes we can feel our toes kind of curled in our shoes or against the carpet, and just really kind of notice what that feels like, draw attention to it. Just one more deep breath. Kind of notice a little bit too what's going on around you, or is there sounds that you are aware of now that maybe you weren't before, or sensations in your body, feelings that are coming up? Is this challenging for you? Are you having a hard time really being able to let go and be relaxed, or are you still experiencing a lot of thoughts that are coming into your head? So just take a minute and notice what's going on for us. Okay, and we'll kind of rejoin back together when you're ready. Just kind of curious if anybody wanted to share if they noticed anything or experienced anything or found that difficult. Some people who are not used to this kind of stuff find it very difficult. I sometimes, when I'm in a work zone and I'm here at work, and at 11 o'clock we have a team meeting and we start with a mindful moment, I admit that sometimes I have trouble turning off the work brain and just, I totally could have fallen asleep. Yes, that's a sign of good relaxation right there. If you're so relaxed that you could fall asleep, yeah. But some of us have a hard time with that, with, stopping and being. That's not something that comes naturally, I think, to a lot of us, especially as we're going through our day and, parenting and going and doing all the time. It can feel uncomfortable. Super burnt shoulders, which isn't helping the tension. Oh no. So you had probably already recognized that, that you got some sun on your shoulders. Yeah. I noticed that I clenched my stomach muscles. Yep. That's very common. I do that too. Yeah. It's kind of that like constant state of just being tense. So yeah, and this is something that you can do, kind of throughout the day, or if you want to check in with yourself, or you need just a couple of minutes just to kind of, scan your body and go through, kind of head to toe and see where you're holding tension or things about yourself that maybe you hadn't noticed, and kind of drawing extra attention to that area and doing some breathing to help release some of that tension in those areas. So that's a good kind of mindfulness exercise to do throughout the day. I have some other ones if you want me to send them out in an email, or we can share them with people, just to really kind of help us be in tune with ourselves and with where we're at. Any kind of questions or anything so far that anybody wants me to make sure to address or talk more about, or experiences they want to share? Kind of want to give us space if you feel comfortable.
I have a comment. I always have comments.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So I have 3 boys, and my first one is 14 and my youngest is 6. And I've noticed that, so we were talking before about second children and how they typically teach you that, you shouldn't judge anyone. Well, so between my second and third child, I basically had to learn more mindfulness techniques because there was just no other way I was going to make it through, right? Like it didn't really work any other way. And I've noticed that my first child has used some of them. So he will now meditate when he's having a hard time, which is amazing. But my youngest child the other day, he had a really rough time one evening and just was crying and crying for like 30 minutes. And, we talked a little bit about it and I tried to hold space for him, but he was just still so upset. And then yesterday we were riding bikes. I was teaching him how to ride a bike. And he actually just out of the blue was like, that day when I was so sad, Mom, well, this is why. And I just want you to know that, I've thought about it and now I'm okay. And and I was like, whoa, right. Like coming from my 6-year-old.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is the modeling of that, because that's the other piece that I have learned, not just the mindfulness, but also saying I'm sorry to my kids when I wasn't mindful, right? Like that piece, otherwise I would just beat myself up. But if I can actually say, hey, I was really upset during that time and I was worried about this and this is why it happened, right? Then they get it. And it's not like I'm just mad at you for no reason. And I think that that's what I was seeing in my 6-year-old. He was like, hey, I thought about this and this is what I want to tell you. And I'm okay now. So yeah, anyway, I may be a better mother of my youngest than my first child. It's interesting to watch how they use those tools when you use them yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. Thanks for sharing that, because you're right. I mean, the whole other side of this is, that if we could really kind of learn to embrace this and use it, certainly our children learn also. They're watching everything and they're so in tune with us. Even young babies are so in tune with our emotional state, even though sometimes we're not very in tune with our own emotional state. But if we can get there and, we can kind of accept and learn and let go, then yeah, it can have a huge impact on our children's, which we call emotional intelligence. It sounds like, Jenny, your little guy has really picked up and learned from you on how to do this. And, for him, it wasn't right there in that exact moment, but he was able to come back to it, which is so amazing for being 6, that he was able to reflect back and say, hey, remember that when I was so upset, this is what happened. And certainly being able to apologize to our children, which is so hard, and which I think a lot of us did not grow up hearing. It was kind of like, well, we deserved that, but we deserved the wrath of the parent. But in actuality, that it's so valuable to be able to go to your children after you've calmed down and say, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have reacted that way. I was really scared. I was really mad. I was really, stressed, whatever it was. And to be able to, we call that repair. There's always going to be conflict in relationships, and especially with our children. And there's going to be times when we just totally lose it. But to go back and to make sure that there's repair after that. And that's so valuable to them, that really teaches them accountability, because, they're young and they're going to lose it too, a lot, several times a day, for young children. And, none of us are, I say this all the time on the helpline, it's like, none of us are born with the ability to learn how to regulate our emotions. It's something that is a process through adulthood that we still really have to learn. And part of it is recognizing, what really triggers us, recognizing, when we're getting stressed, and knowing how to manage it before it bottles up and explodes. And so, it's such a valuable thing to be able to pass on to our kids if we can really start to practice this, because we're really teaching them how to effectively manage stress, how to label emotions and manage those emotions, which is a really, really hard thing for young kids, and it's going to take a long time, and we're all adults and we're all still figuring it out. But it's a great thing to model for them and to teach them. So that's the other part of mindful parenting, is what the example that we're setting for our kids when we can take a break and pause before we react and then choose to respond, because there's a difference in reacting and responding.
Oh my gosh. That's one of the things I talk with my kids about so much, like the difference between a reaction and a response. Like, you are not thinking about your reaction. Right. That is like a split second, like I reacted, and responding is like inherently you are taking the time to think about, how am I going to react, right? Like, and then it doesn't become a reaction, it becomes a response. And absolutely, it's actually been really interesting and humbling to see how well, because my kids are all on online school still, to see how their teachers are pulling mindfulness practices into their teaching. So the other night, this is not super random, like it does follow the conversation, I promise. But the other night, my daughter, first of all, they've started passing me notes and pictures and things saying like, Mom, you need a break. You need to relax. I'm like, oh crap. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
But yeah, right. But the other night, my daughter goes, getting ready for bed, and girls are in their bed, and she goes, Mom, before we go to sleep, we need to practice a little mindfulness. I'm like, oh, do we? Okay, I'm game. And she goes, put your hand like this. I'm like, okay. She goes, now breathe in and out, and in and out. And she goes a whole hand, and I'm like, oh. And she lays down. She's like, good night, Mom. I'm like, what the? Oh, okay, good night. I'm like, I give up. I quit. You can be the mom now.
Yeah.
But it was
that's
so
amazing,
right? Like, it was so cool to see that that's something that she's learned and like really internalized, that she would pull it out when not only she feels stressed, but when she's seeing other people in her life, like her mom being stressed too, and like, just wound up too tight, that she would be the ones to like bring that to the forefront. Like, we need to slow down now. Like, let me teach you this. So humbling, but also really, really sweet to see that my kids know,
no kidding.
They're little sponges. If we show them, they will do it. Right.
So, right. Exactly. Cool. Yeah. That's an amazing example. Thanks for sharing that. And that reminds me too of kind of, nighttime, bedtime, when things are, hopefully you get to the point in your home when, things are a little bit more quiet and children are in bed and asleep. And, we often talk about, kind of reflecting on the day. And we also really encourage parents to write down some things that went well that day. I think so much we focus on, get to the end of the day and we're so exhausted. And a lot of times, and I can totally relate to this, the things you think back on are the times that maybe weren't great. Like, you feel bad about, raising your voice when you you know, don't want to do that as a parent, or being short with your kids, or, you know, I mean, yes, I didn't get XYZ done right, like all the things that didn't happen or didn't go well. And so we always encourage parents at the end of the day to try to come up with a couple of things that did go well, or that, you know, that you can feel good about at the end of your day. Because I think the more you get into the practice of doing that, you start to, you know, kind of changes your mindset going into the next day of like, okay, some things, reframing, right, some things did go well today, even though, you know, I feel bad about these things and this didn't get done, and, you know, we didn't get here or there, or, you know, there's still dirty dishes in the sink right now and I'm gonna go to bed anyway. You know, all of those things, but to, you know, when you write it down, it really makes it tangible and real. And so try to, you know, come up with a couple of things at the end of the day. It says, I bought my kids the Happy Me journal to do this, and they often ask me to do it too. That's a great idea. Yeah. And that's kind of what that's talking about, is like, what went well.
Yeah, it's like your top 3 things for the
Yeah.
day. Your top 3 things. And like, even if they had a rough day, they'll come up with like 3. They'll be like, oh yeah, well, like yesterday it was like, I drew, you know, and I'm like, okay, you drew. And you know, like whatever it is that they come up with. But then
That's
I
how
can,
you de-stress.
I had a really good time in my garden. You know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And even for young kids, you know, I have a 3-year-old, and we kind of, at the end of each day, you know, we do bed and stories, and he always likes to talk about his day. And we always try to say, you know, what was, for him, I would say, what was your favorite part about today? Or what's something that from today that you really liked? And he's usually able to identify, you know, a few things that went well. And to my surprise, it always, you know, when we go through and talk about his day, it always interests me that he never talks about the, you know, the parts of the day where we had conflict or we had struggle, and that weighs so heavy on my heart at the end of the day. But to hear him kind of recap his day and what he remembers from the day and what his favorite parts are of from the day, it's always so interesting to hear what stuck out to him, you know, because a day in the life of a 3-year-old is it's pretty long, you know, and there's a lot of things that happen, and it's so interesting to kind of hear from him of those things that he picks out that he enjoyed or were good for him throughout the day. So for us to do that too.
My parents or my mom really started doing something with the kids a while back. And I don't know, I'm sure she probably got it from somewhere. But it was this thing where she would say, what's your rose and what's your thorn? So like what was a good thing and what was a bad thing? And then we ended up adding to it, bud, to stick with our plant illustration. So like, what are you hopeful for? You know, like, so like if there was a really bad thorn for that day, then we could start to that reframing process, you know, of saying like, but, you know, I'm looking forward to this, or, you know, something is hopeful down the road. So it's been cool, and they'll bring it up every once in a while. We haven't done it actively in a little while, but you know, every once in a while they'll bring it up. And the same thing, like the things that we stress so much about as adults, as parents, about how we're failing our kids or how we're screwing them up and setting them up for therapy needs and all that, you know, it is so interesting, the things that they pick out. Like you said, you know, like your son who's 3, and my youngest is 6 as well. And you know, what was your favorite part of today? And it was like snuggling you, you know, and I'm like, oh, that was like 2 seconds of the day. Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess I'll call that a win.
Yeah. Well, he picks up on that was the time when he was really connected with you, as I think more than anything, kids so seek connection from us. And what stands out in their day is when they have that, you know, kind of uninterrupted quality time and sense of connection, of we're in this experience together, we're in this moment together. And I think the more that we are in tune and mindful of ourselves, we can be that for our kids, and to be really what we call like attuned to them, of like clued into what's going on for them emotionally, and then being able to kind of think about that with them and to respond the way that we always hoped we would respond. And so emotional attunement is really kind of the cornerstone of infant mental health and early childhood mental health, is to have a caregiver who is in it with you and really has a felt experience with you, because that's really, what kids desire the most out of us. They don't care if they, at a young age anyways, have, all the newest, fanciest toys, or, where their neighborhood is located, or how much money parents have. What they really want and need is an attuned caregiver, and to be able to be that for them is really the best gift that we can give them. And so, it starts with us. We got to start being attuned with us, and to be, aware of what's going on for us, so that we don't let things build up and get buried, and then they come out in one way or another. And it's usually not pretty. So I'm trying to take a few moments throughout your day, and then kind of wrap up at the end of the day by some things that actually did go well. Because there's probably a lot more, especially in your children's eyes. There's always a lot more that went well that we probably didn't even know or recognize. All right.
Especially if you have babies too. I mean, it's not something I actually really thought about until my youngest child. He started talking really early, and just the things he would say, I would be like, "Oh, you were thinking this that whole time, and you were like really little," right?
Yeah.
Like, and that they live so much in the moment that even if some moment, like the diaper change, right? Like they all scream during the diaper change when they're so tiny, and it seems like this is this horrible thing. And I remember being like, "I'm so sorry, I'm going as fast as I can," right? But like the next moment, they're like, "Okay," right? And the fact that they
it's over
so much as a 6-year-old, still, it's the same. So yeah, it is kind of interesting thinking back about that, and the fact that even when you have a small child, or a 1-year-old, that they're still, yeah, there might be some rough moments, but they get past it and then sit in that beautiful snuggle moment with you and remember that versus, whatever they had, it was harder. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's about all I have. Any other questions or concerns or comments or anything? I'll talk a little bit about kind of natural supports. How do we access this? How do we, have the ability to learn to do this? And so, it takes practice, but I think, using your support system, which has been so hard this past year, but thank goodness for technology, and for Zoom and FaceTime and all those things, that we can still connect. Because I think as much as our kids need connection from us, we need connection from other people too. And so knowing also when, it's time to reach out, and to, isolation is really, this past year especially, but for new moms in general, isolation tends to be such a tough thing that so commonly is experienced. You kind of get this feeling of like nobody else, you have friends who have kids who are maybe older and they're not in that, and maybe they have experienced with it, but kind of just like what fourth trimester is creating here, is having communities and of people that can really kind of get where you're at and can help remind you to do some of these things. And so, finding virtual supports, if that's, really kind of the land we're in right now. But then too, reaching out when you feel like you're beyond the ability to use these techniques is usually when you need, and you feel like you need connection with somebody else. So, you know, obviously I work for the Birth to Five Helpline, and I don't know, you know, how many people have used it out there or have seen the magnet that, you know, was sent home in your hospital bag, or, you know, whatever it is. People, you know, might be hesitant to call, but yeah, I mean, we really are supports for parents. A lot of people think we're an advice line, and that's, you know, a small amount of what we do, but we really try to take the time to hold space and to listen and to explore. And so, you know, parents are certainly welcome to, you know, if you're just kind of in that moment and you feel like you're, you know, really need just connection and somebody to talk to, you know, or you have questions, or you're feeling overwhelmed, or you feel like you've lost your ability to trust yourself, and you're just, you know, your baby has feeding difficulties and sleep difficulties, and it's like one thing after another. You know, that's what we're here for. We use a lot of mindfulness for ourselves. As helpline specialists, we call it mindful self-regulation is a big thing of what we do, because we know for us that we have to be, you know, very present with that caller and very mindful of where we're at, so that we can be that for them, so they can be that for their children. So the helpline is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can call or text or email us. The number is, and I should have had a slide with all this information, but it's, oh, you can put it in the chat. That's right.
Yeah.
I can put it in the chat, but the helpline is 877-705-5437. And like I said, even if you call and leave us a message after hours, somebody will get back to you. Put this in the chat.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's, you know, we answer questions. Really, the only thing we don't answer questions about is like medical stuff. You know, we can't help you if you call and ask us, you know, what dose of Tylenol you can give your 6-month-old. Like that will refer back to the pediatrician on that, because we're not medical providers. But pretty much anything else, we've probably almost heard it all, and we're not surprised by much of anything anymore. So
what is your email? You mentioned you could email as well.
Yes, it's helpline, and I'll put it in the chat too. It's helpline@swhd.org.
And you can also text, right? That was the, and do you guys have an app now too? I feel like maybe that.
We do have an app, yeah. And the app is available on, I think it's just called the Birth to Five Helpline app. It's available on Android or iPhone or whatever. It's in the App Store. And that allows you just to be able to text us right from the app, or call us right from the app, or send an email right from the app. And so, you know, it's kind of support right there at your fingertips. We also have a fussy baby program for babies under the age of 1. It used to be home visiting, but hopefully we'll get back to that at some point. But for now, it's all Zoom. It's always been Zoom outside of Maricopa County, and then we would do in-home inside of Maricopa County. Now we're doing all Zoom, but the hope would be that we'll go back to in-person sometime in the near future for those inside of Maricopa County. But that's really a very therapeutic, supportive program for parents who are, you know, really struggling with a child under 1 with feeding or sleeping, or concerns about development, or concerns about connecting, parent-child relationship bonding, anything like that. And to access that, you would just call the Birth to Five helpline, because all of the helpline specialists are all trained fussy baby specialists also. So, you know, even if we're getting a call and it's just a helpline call, you know, and it's seeming a little bit more like it might fit well into, you know, being a fussy baby family, we'll kind of explore that with the family and see if doing a Zoom visit might be helpful. Sometimes it's helpful for us to see a feeding, or to see some of the child's behaviors that maybe the parents are concerned about. But so that's just for children under 1, and that's the fussy baby program.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great with that. And, well, plus having a place to call if like your baby's poop looks funny, or if your child is acting strange, right? Like, I mean, if you're wondering, I mean, the baby poop thing, I tell parents all the time, like, you never think you're going to be so interested in poop until you have a baby. Like, you just don't. And then you get like 3 or 4 weird poops and you're like, is this normal? I was convinced one of my children had a parasite and found out later that the babysitter had been feeding him a whole bunch of oranges that were not being fully digested. And so they looked like little eggs in his diaper. So yes, the Birth to Five Helpline would have been very helpful in that sense. If I'd known 9 years ago.
I just had a poop question this morning already. So constipation question. I mean, sometimes that borders on medical, but we're also able to give quite a bit of advice on some information on what's actually typical for baby poop at certain ages. And so yeah, it's a common thing we hear about.
A lot of what we need as moms often is just reassurance too, right?
Yes.
Like, this is pretty normal. This sounds like this is, something your child might be going through because they're this age, and here's some.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Reassurance.
Well, Adrienne, I'm going to pop us off of Facebook Live. If there's anybody who's watching us on Facebook Live who wants to ask any questions that they didn't want to do on Facebook, feel free to join us. So I'm going to do that right now. All right. Bye, Facebook family.